I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Are you serious? Because I feel like someone's watching me.
All the time. It's not something like I can describe the direction.
Do you feel like it's not just the vibe of the FBI guy through our laptops?
No, no.
This is like an aura.
Yeah, exactly. It's not webcam spying. This is something greater, more distant. I think it's coming from above.
Do you think it could be aliens tapping into what we're saying?
Oh my gosh. We've spent all this time talking about looking for aliens, but what about the aliens that could be looking at us?
They're probably listening right now, like you silly earthlings.
Well, let's explore that, because could they really be listening?
I think that's a really cool topic and one of my favorites.
So today on the Blast Off, we're going to flip the perspective. We've been talking about searching for life, the probability of intelligent life, but let's turn that lens around and think about if there really are intelligent aliens out there within a close enough distance to observe us. We'll get more into that.
Yeah. Would they know we exist?
Yeah.
Are they looking for us? And would we even show up? Because here we are thinking we're so high and mighty and intelligent.
Yeah.
But really, they might not even know we exist. And that could be a reflection on our advancements.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty cool.
So this week in the Blast Off, what do aliens know about us?
Hopefully not too much.
So this week on the Blast Off, what do aliens know about us? I'm Dr. Rebecca Allen, and of course,
I'm future Dr. Sara Webb.
So thanks for joining us again. Due to popular demand, we're going to keep delving into these wonderful, fascinating philosophical questions. Are we alone? If we're not alone, what could these other intelligent species be learning about us? So let's get the ball rolling. Space is really freaking big. It takes like a decade just for us to send a space probe out to the outer edges of our solar system.
It's mind-boggling. I can't even fathom how big space is.
Yeah.
So it takes us a decade to send New Horizons out to Pluto. And that's the fastest man-made thing ever.
Like that's the limits of our technology.
And it's hurtling out at like thousands of kilometers per second, traveling, crazy fast, but 10 years for that little distance is crazy. And so we should probably talk about how big is the galaxy we live in.
Absolutely. So in astronomy, a lot of times, we use these gargantuan distances, and that is because space is so big that if we were to explain everything in feet or meters, those numbers would just have so many zeros attached to them that
we'd lose track.
We lose track. And even now, it's really hard to conceptualize. But the idea is that we have essentially, we start with meters if we're using scientific units, and then we go up to a kilometer, which if you're traveling, a kilometer is a pretty,
easy distance.
That's something that we're familiar with. But then if we're getting up to just even thinking about the distance between Earth and the sun, we have to use
astronomical units. Because it's astronomically large.
And very creatively, again, we have dubbed the distance between Earth and the sun as 1 astronomical unit.
That's right.
Now, that translates into millions, tens of millions of miles and kilometers.
And meters, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
And bigger.
And then when you look at an astronomical unit and you expand that out to other stars that might be right next door to us, that unit is no longer usable because it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So then we jump to light years.
Yeah.
So light is the fastest thing in the universe. It's the only thing that can travel at this gargantuan speed of 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. Imagine that, traveling that fast. That's insane.
That's more than 1 million meters per second. And just a quick physics review, how is it possible that light can move that quickly? Well, it's because it doesn't have mass. And that's, again, the challenge of us building things which can move even close to the speed of light. We're really getting to realms of physics where it would be very challenging just because we have mass.
It's the bane of my existence.
Yeah.
But when we start start to move faster and faster to the speed of light, then Einstein's tricky E equals mc squared starts coming into
That's
play.
right.
And all of the mass ends up getting converted to energy, and it's literally a hot mess of this energetic soup, and we can't make anything to travel even close to a fraction of the speed of light. We can do like the most minuscule things.
That's right.
So we'll be talking on our human-based levels.
Yeah.
Aliens might be a little bit more civilized.
Sure.
Maybe they can warp speed.
Absolutely.
Issues with that, but maybe they can. No judgment.
That is a philosophical discussion for another episode.
And we
time travel and space warps.
Yeah, space warped, and even if our universe is warped, which would be cool. But today we're assuming very flat universe. No one can travel faster than the speed of light. That's a no-no.
And so, what is the speed of light?
And so it is the distance that if you threw a light particle and just let it swim its little way through the universe, it's how far it could travel in that time. So like I said, we use light years. So how far could a particle of light travel in a year? And it is an insane distance.
Yeah.
It is.
Think about that. Over millions of meters per second. Okay, and there are 3,600 seconds in 1 hour.
In 1 hour?
Yeah.
And then 24 hours in a day, 365 days in a year. Like,
lots of meters. Hence, meters don't work. And now we're even getting to the point where light years. Okay, so the nearest star to us besides the sun is
about 4-ish light years away. So we're using these units because the distances we're traveling, or we're theoretically traveling in this episode, are insane. So the closest star to us, which is Alpha Centauri, is 4 light years away, which means that if you go up in the night sky and you look at Alpha Centauri, all of that light you're seeing is 4 years old.
I was going to say, that's a really great concept that we're going to kind of discuss so that you can appreciate not just how big space is, talking about distances, but that information is limited by the speed of light. So when we might use those terms synonymously, but when we say information, we're talking about light, because that's how we communicate, is through light, is through radio signals mostly, with our cell phones.
Yeah, a lot of people don't fully appreciate that, the radio signals that we use to listen to, obviously the radio or broadcast TV or even cell phone signals.
Wi-Fi.
Just light. They're really long wavelengths of light, but it's no different to the light.
No, so they're traveling at those incredible speeds.
That's right.
But the fact that something is 4 or 5 light years away, that means if that star were to explode, we would not see that change for years.
4 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And what's even cooler is that's the closest star to us. Like the very next, if you were hitchhiking in the galaxy, that would be your next stop. But if you explore further and further, we have 300 billion-ish stars in our galaxy.
Billions. So now we're taking that. So a billion is a factor of 10 greater than a million. So again, it's really hard, even for astronomers, to wrap our minds around these stupid large distances.
Very large distances. And so in our galaxy, which is a collection of stars, and we happen to live in a beautiful galaxy called the Milky Way, which has spiral arms, and it's all very pretty. And so those 300 billion stars that live there, they span a width of 100,000 light years, which means that it would take 100,000 years for a little particle of light to travel across it, which is insane. So like on human timescales, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Like it's half of the recorded human history it takes to go from one side of the galaxy to the other.
Yeah, but so then, the flip side of that is that we're actually looking back in time, because we're seeing that light that existed in the past. We're seeing something that was in its past state.
It's super cool. It's like a budget time machine. You just get a telescope and you look back in time.
Look at something far away. That also means its light has taken that long to reach you.
And this is just in our galaxy. So in future episodes, we'll explore other galaxies in the universe, and it's just this giant, awesome time machine that you can explore. But in our galaxy, something that is on a universal scale so tiny, we're still looking way back in time.
Way back in time.
Which
and
is
so
very cool.
Now we're up to hundreds of thousands of light years. So there's actually another unit of measurement for distance that comes into play here, which is called the parsec. Now, the parsec I really love because we're not just, talking about measuring out a finite distance like you would would with a ruler. We're getting now a little bit more complex.
Yes, because the universe is not just hanging out as it is and
In
never
this
changing.
2D plane, no.
It's 3-dimensional, well, 4-dimensional if you add time.
Maybe multi-dimensional if string theory is true.
That's right. There could be 13 dimensions just hanging on out here. But for this case, we'll say it's 4-dimensional.
Yeah.
So we've got our spatial dimension and then our time dimension.
Yeah.
And then when you try to take all of that, the universe just isn't this box of stuff existing. It's also expanding.
That's right.
And that's really hard, especially as a physicist, to try to be like, okay, we're taking this huge chunk of space and time,
Yeah.
and we need to equate for it's this size, but it's also expanding as we're measuring that
Right.
size, which is where the Hubble constant comes in.
Yeah.
Which we'll probably delve into more later. But
Yeah.
for now, big universe.
Yeah. So light years just not good enough. Okay.
It's a little hard to wrap your head around.
It is. So we're going to make it even harder. So the idea is that, now we've looked at the closest star, which is a few light years away, but that's the closest star. So then moving out in our solar neighborhood.
Yeah, if we want to look out, and so our solar neighborhood's pretty cool. We're on the outskirts of our galaxy.
Mhm.
We're in like the cool, nice suburbs of the galaxy. We're not near the city.
The burbs.
The burbs. But if we want to look at the city of our galaxy, the center of our galaxy, we have to not only go light years, we have to go thousands of light
Yeah.
years. And
So that gets really cumbersome.
it does. So we introduce a whole new unit.
Yeah. So now we're doing a throwback to geometry. We're not just thinking about a linear distance anymore. We're going to introduce some angles. So there's this distance called a parsec. And essentially what that means, to be a parsec away, means that you subtend an angle of 1 arc second. And so, as you can see from this diagram that we have here to help you, the idea, so what is an arc second? Well, just as we have seconds and minutes and hours, we have arc seconds, arc minutes, and degrees. And so, what a degree is, your 90-degree angle. And so an arc second is a teeny tiny little fraction of a degree. So very small distance on the sky. And that parsec, that's about, a few light years. So it's kind of a messy translation, but it helps us better because now we've introduced this angle, and that's great because things aren't static in our galaxy.
We could be looking at the top of the galaxy or all the way across the bulge to the bottom of the
Right.
galaxy, which is a huge distance that we need parsecs to be able to figure out exactly where are we looking on the sky.
Yeah, so the parsec helps us in this dynamic, galaxy that we're in. But again, we're just in this one little area. And as we're looking across our galaxy, it turns out that now we've got to ramp it up even more. We've got to add some more zeros to the end. So,
So our Milky Way is 100,000 light years across,
right.
30 kiloparsecs across, not just parsecs, kiloparsecs across, 300 billion stars, massive, one supermassive black hole. We should throw her in.
Yeah, why not?
Sagittarius A star, she's a gem.
She's important.
But the idea is that this galaxy, which is our local friendly neighborhood of stellar neighbors and stars and anything that would be able to detect life or our life, is massive.
Yeah.
And so we should dive into, well, who out of all of these stars can actually see us, because it's the tiniest fraction. It is
That's
less
right.
than a percent of 1% of all of the stars that can actually see us. So I reckon we should go into the first method of trying to find life, which is what we look for,
Yeah.
what other intelligent civilizations probably look for.
Yeah, so we're making some assumptions here, but that's
Yeah.
totally fine because, what I think we have to appreciate is we have our human perspective. That's the lens that we look at the universe with. And so we're going to just assume, that.
They're similar-ish
Sure,
to us.
why not?
Or they have
Yeah.
the same logic to us, that if they're advanced enough to discover the electromagnetic spectrum and use it
Yeah,
to communicate, then they're probably looking for other civilizations as
Yeah.
well. So there's this thing called radio leakage, which we touched on briefly last episode, and it's the idea that our radio signals and anything we're broadcasting in the electromagnetic spectrum on Earth is just leaking out, because you can imagine they're these waves, and they just travel until they're
just cruising.
Yeah, until they're stopped or absorbed. But because these waves are, kilometers long, they pretty much don't get stopped by anything. So they just travel along. So when was our first radio signal? Do you remember? We obviously weren't born.
No. It was back in the early 1900s, right?
It was. So our first radio signal, well, it depends. So they were starting to test radio back in the late 1800s. They figured out what these electromagnetic waves were. But the first public broadcast, so of a signal, was actually in Massachusetts, and it was the Christmas Eve signal. So they sent it on the 24th of December in 1906.
So let's just pause for a second. Humans have been around for a very, very long time. Still only a little fraction of the Earth's history, but we've been around for a long time. But just in the last, basically 100 years, did we figure out how to master the electromagnetic spectrum and use it for communication.
So it's like we're in our infancy of...
Absolutely.
It is crazy that it took us this long, and you can imagine it's going to take any other civilization this long as well.
Right.
And so we started leaking, I guess we can say, Christmas Eve in 1906, because that was when they started broadcasting for the public to pick up, and it ramped up since then.
Yeah.
So we've got all of the communications between radio stations, between, ham radios work on radio. We've got TV and analog signals.
Antennas,
all of that jazz. So we're going to say we've been leaking for roughly 113 years. So what does that mean distance-wise? So if we know that these signals travel at the speed of light, we can do quick math and get that 113 light years away is our limit of anyone detecting our leakage, which is not very big.
No. So it's not very big at all.
Not very big at all. So you can imagine if our galaxy is 100,000 light years across and we're just leaking to about 100 light years in radius, that's 1%. We're reaching 1%.
1%.
That is crazy. And so I did some research to figure out in this 1% of what we're reaching, what type of stars are we actually hitting.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We know from last episode that the little M dwarfs are not great. They're
good at making rocky planets.
They're really good at making rocky planets, but they're also really good at destroying them with their flares.
We can't wait to delve into that in a later episode, but
So we're going to look for stars that are just like us. So our star is a G-type star, and she's pretty wonderful.
She's a G.
She's
the OG.
She is the OG. And it means that she's not too flary, she's not too hot, she's not too cold, she's just right.
Just right.
And if we look at the number of G-type stars that we have in this little circle, we only have 500.
Now, 500 is a nice number. It's a big number, but again, cosmically speaking, it ain't nothing.
It is so tiny. 500. That got my hopes so down.
Yeah.
But there are other stars. So there's about 14,000 stars in this region, but a lot of them are going to be really violent. They're going to be neutron stars, so dead stars that are very actively spinning, and
magnetic fields.
They're not going to be the best place for life. So best case, we've got 500 pretty perfect stars that could have life. What would they say?
Well, so 500, Goldilocks stars, but then, imagine they could probably maybe have like one or two habitable planets
if we look lucky.
If they're lucky. So we look at the history of our solar system. So we'll roughly equate 500 of these wonderful stars to Earth-type planets.
Yeah. And so what would they see if they were looking back?
So that depends on how far away they are. So let's think about our most powerful telescopes that we have on Earth. So outside of Earth, we have the Hubble Space Telescope. And on Earth, we have these large, 10 meter plus telescopes. So that means a 10 meter large light collecting area. So these are galaxies. Haha, just kidding. These are telescopes that can detect galaxies. So now we're going outside the Milky Way. We're going not kiloparsecs, we're going megaparsecs away. These are telescopes that can detect not just stars or even other faint planets. They can do that, but they can see way, 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 way out into the universe.
They can see in the way back. So they can see the galaxies forming in the very early universe.
Yeah.
But even though they're that powerful, if we were to point them at the star or a planet, they're just going to see some light reflected off it.
And I wanted to jump on this because last week we were talking about, Kepler, and we were talking about, looking beyond our solar system, the fact that even the Hubble Space Telescope or these giant ground-based telescopes, the images they get of Pluto are blurry. When we say blurry, it just means not super resolved because they're so faint. But Hubble has been able to take images of planets around other stars. So we know we can do it, but just as we mentioned last time, those planets that it's seeing are the hot Jupiters. They're giant gas planets super close into their star. And so again, if we're thinking other human type species, they ain't there.
No, they probably can't see us.
No.
They can maybe detect that we exist from some of the methods we talked about last week. So they might know we exist and they might hear our radio broadcast, but they're going to be super weak. So you might all be familiar with the book by Carl Sagan called Contact. Or the amazing movie with Jodie Foster that you should all watch right now.
But hold on though, PSA, because I have many friends who are radio astronomers and who study these amazing things called fast radio bursts. We don't listen to radio signals, okay? It's a great movie, fantastic book, but just gotta throw that out there for my radio friends.
The supercomputer does all of the listening.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we sat there 24 hours a day?
There's just too much. There's just too much information.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But apart from that, the movie is pretty cool. And Carl Sagan took a cool approach. So he looked at this idea of what would aliens know about us. And one of the things was that one of the first TV broadcasts was actually the 1936 opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, where Hitler did a speech.
Yay!
Which is not the best representation of humanity. But another astrophysicist from the SETI Institute called Seth Shostak, sorry if I said that wrong, he did some math on this and he found that the broadcast of Hitler presenting at the opening games would actually be a little bit too weak for anyone to detect. So that's interesting. So good.
No Hitler.
Please don't represent humans. But it means, well, what is detectable? And it turns out a lot of what we're leaking out, unless they have amazing technology and really great receivers, they probably can't hear us.
So over in maybe even, Alpha Centauri, you mean they're not getting to watch Real Housewives?
Right. Signal's probably awful. The buffering time would be terrible. But they would have to have great technology and very focused in. So we've got some downsides. So they can't image us. They can't see the dinosaurs walking around.
Yeah, so let's jump on that. So let's say they could see us.
Right.
Now we're thinking of where we are now, technology-wise, or even in the last 100 years. But if they were far enough away, they would be seeing Earth as it existed when the dinosaurs were roaming the Earth, or even earlier when you had all these other kind of weird life forms.
Yeah, or when we were just forming,
when we were just coming out of the pool.
So I wanted to figure out how big an optical telescope would have to be to see something on Earth. And so I found this really cool article that I'll link below that explained how big a telescope would have to be on Earth just to see a man on the moon. And I'm like, okay.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So we use 10-meter telescopes, which are the biggest and the best telescopes in the world.
Until they make the ones that are the 30-meter telescopes.
Which I'm excited
Which hopefully will not be blocked by somebody's satellite constellation. Just had to say it. No.
But right, so at the moment, 10-meter telescopes are state-of-the-art, and we're building and planning a 30-meter telescope, which is just like giant.
Yeah.
But if we wanted to, sorry, got emotional. If we wanted to see a little man walking around on the moon, guess how big the mirror has to be?
50 meters?
It has to be 100 meters wide, which is just insane. So 100 meters wide just to see a man.
Isn't that the size of an Olympic pool?
Yeah.
So imagine a mirror that size.
That's insane.
No.
And it's so, hats off to any civilization that can build. So if we're talking, the moon's only, 380,000 kilometers away. If they want to see us, they're going to need something thousands of kilometers wide, which if they can build that, hats off to them.
Hats off. But
it's so unlikely.
Can you imagine, where would you find that space to build that and have it be completely unobstructed? Even probably by the number of satellites we have. have now, there would be some issues. But that is an interesting point because, building these optical telescopes so large, very, very hard. But what about like Arecibo?
Well, Arecibo is massive, but she's a radio telescope. So radio is where things get really interesting because you can get high signal to noise with relatively cheap materials.
Right. You don't have to have this super reflective surface where you're focusing in optical photons.
You can just have a normal, so some telescopes are even made out of things that look like chicken wire, but they're just, they're absorbent enough to bounce back the radio waves that we want to see. And so Arecibo actually sent a message to outer space because it's not only big enough, but it's powerful enough to send a message that would get over the noise. So that's another thing the astronomer Seth was saying is that if they are to detect anything, it's probably this one signal we sent back in the good old days of 1974. So
now that's interesting because in the early 70s, that's when Carl Sagan's Cosmos first came out.
It is. And since then, there's been it's not illegal. I don't think it's illegal to broadcast into space, but it's a bit of a taboo. You don't want to continually shoot messages at places saying, hi, we're here.
Right.
Which, statistically, the likelihood of an intelligent species coming and taking over Earth is basically zero. But
unless they're already here.
Trump.
No, but I think the idea, is that we, again, if we're going to compare and say we think they're like us, would we want them to come here? I mean, look at what we've done. There's a lot of great people out there. I'm not trying to say it, but on average, if we're sending these signals out, what are they going to see?
I know, and if we are like at the moment where the most advanced we've been and we're still fighting for, basic human rights and to have people, have safe homes and safe beliefs and
even just taking care of the planet that we call home.
I know, it's so sad.
So who knows if there was this, intelligent race out there and they viewed us, they could actually see us after humanity ends. So think about that as well. But anyway, not to get too depressing, but this idea that we have to think about the time scale that we'll call them modern civilizations. So going back to the very first real human civilizations have existed. And then seeing how long that took for us to be able to use electromagnetic spectrum, so i.e. radio waves and light to communicate. And then even looking to the future, like we're thinking about using lasers to communicate. We're working on that kind of technology. And again, high powered, very focused. And so that could be something that we could detect with these programs such as Breakthrough Listen. What if they're doing the super focused signal? And
they accidentally, if it leaks out into space, we can grab that.
Yeah, but it's got to be right place, right time.
Right.
And so that's what we're saying more of is that probability is so small. And even if we could detect them or they could detect us, the information we get back would just be, I love the idea of like these time capsules that people bury. And so you just are getting this little scattering of details about that person, about that time.
Right.
And so it would even be less than that, I feel like.
Yeah, so if aliens receive this, it's called the Arecibo signal. So it was shot out into a region in the sky called M31. And so So even if this M13. So even if this Arecibo signal, which was shot into a region of the sky called M13, which is this, it's a star cluster. And so it was shot there because lots of stars, good chance of something actually existing there. It's 25,000 light years away. So that signal has barely left Earth at this stage. It's just, 30 years traveling around. And so we wouldn't hear back from them until what year is it? I had to do math, it's so far away. It's the year 25,974. Which, the way humans...
Even if we're being optimistic here, giving ourselves another,
Oh, sorry. That's when they would receive the signal. We wouldn't hear back from them until the year, 51,000. That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
So, it's not looking good, but
no.
If aliens were listening in, they'd probably be picking up some of our TV. If they were sensitive enough, they might see our hello signal.
And so I just kind of want to jump off that. So they might be getting these glimpses of us, but there are a lot of, theories that, essentially attribute some of mankind's greatest accomplishments to this alien presence that was here and that they gave us this technology. And so I just want to explore that a little bit, and this idea that, okay, we've just talked about how long it would take for signals to come back and forth. So the idea that an alien civilization that's much more advanced to us, would know we were here and that we were at this preliminary stage. Let's say go back to the era of the Maya or, the Egyptians, that they would just look down and they'd be like, oh, those poor humans, look at them trying to build that big old rock structure. Like, let's go down and help them.
So we're talking about these ancient aliens, which is a great documentary series that you should all watch. But it's so unrealistic.
Yeah.
Right? So the idea is that humans wouldn't have gotten to the peak of our intelligence or our civilizations without interference. So we couldn't have built the pyramids, we couldn't have built the Mayan pyramids or the Inca pyramids, or we couldn't have had the Roman Empire. All of that jazz is attributed to.
And that just really me off, to be quite frank with you, because if we look back, to me, that's taking away credit from these amazing indigenous astronomers who, they studied the patterns that they saw in the sky and they realized that those were there. And you know what? So they built monuments to that to help them measurement. But that was because they literally needed to track that for life to continue.
Right. And because the stellar, the sky was attributed to so much meaning back then as well. Yeah. So you could predict, where your crop's going to be good.
Exactly.
Because of different eclipses, and where you're going to have, a good next 10 years because a comet came through. But they use that very spiritually.
Or there's Venus, time to make war.
That was a bad day.
No, but, humans have always had that, I'll call it a flaw, is that we, when we don't understand something, we tend to attribute it to supernaturalism. But that's okay, because, we want to understand more. And as we have science to help us, then we understand more about what those patterns mean.
But isn't it cooler that back thousands of years ago, there were these little civilizations that were smart enough to realize that if they built a pyramid on this angle,
absolutely,
that on one day of the year, the 3 stars in Osiris would line up.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then also Stonehenge.
Exactly.
There's a whole Ancient Aliens episode about Stonehenge and how if they wanted to view the eclipse through the little hole in Stonehenge, they would have needed help. And no, they were clever.
They didn't need help. They did not need help. No.
And I think that's taking a lot away from the human civilization and the human journey to get to where we are now.
Exactly. And that's, again, what we want you to appreciate. We have gone through a lot. And so everybody else that's out there in our friendly galaxy, neighborhood galaxy,
they're going through a lot too.
They're going through a lot too.
And this brings us to one of my favorite paradoxes, is that we all go through a lot, but at different stages.
Right.
And so there's a really good chance that there has been, and there will be, other civilizations coming up to our level of intelligence and, existence and being able to communicate with electromagnetic waves. But there's a very good chance that they either have existed before us or that they will exist after us, and that we will actually never
overlap.
Ever. Even our radio signals will, disperse out, travel past. They're now forming planets. And, in a couple million billion years, they could exist, which is pretty cool and it's also kind of sad, but humbling.
I don't think it's sad. Exactly. I think it's humbling. There aren't aliens that are out there that just, are going to come help us fix our problems, because let's be honest, we've had a lot greater problems in our history than building the freaking pyramids. So we would have loved that extraterrestrial help a few times. I love the wonder and this philosophical idea of that there is probably other life out there. But you know what? It's up to us to continue to progress progress humanity in a positive direction and to keep looking out and learning as much as we can. But, you know, I like it because to me, it does in a way signify that we're special.
Yeah, we are incredibly special. The fact that we exist and that you are sitting there on a computer looking at us right now, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Considering the probability of life just successfully evolving on Earth is not great.
No.
Like,
many extinctions have happened.
a lot. And we're starting to go into this other era of, you know, humans are now making other animals extinct. And, you know, who knows in the future there might be.
Well, we've been pretty good at that, honestly, since the beginning. So
we eat them, we farm them.
yeah.
But speaking of the future, who knows? Maybe humans will be the next, you know, major species to go extinct.
See, I was trying to end it like on a positive note and say it's up to us, and you're like, and maybe we'll be dead, but who cares?
We're a half glass full, half glass empty. But it means that this whole moment and this whole, you know, existence in the present day is amazing, whether we exist in the future or we don't.
So,
But it is up to us to continually try and have a better humanity and a better existence.
absolutely,
on this planet.
because we're not going to kill the Earth. Earth will probably end up
Killing us.
unless it's a mega asteroid, and the universe will go on. And so I think that's the thing, is we have to appreciate that we're in this special period because it's when we're existing now, and that the universe has been around for billions of years, and it will probably continue its merry own way
For trillions and trillions of years.
So I think,
Do you know what's cool?
what?
Is that this broadcast might be being picked up by whoever billions and trillions of years later.
Long after we are dead.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So if you are an alien out there and you do get to listen to this, we come in peace. This has been The Blast Off. Thanks.